Part 1. When the Earth Still Sang. Appalachia, 1600. Late autumn. Before there were dorm rooms, before lights flickered in the dark or mirrors whispered names, before the tapping, before the walls began to breathe, there was the land, unbroken, unscarred, a world still in the throes of its first dreaming, the ancient ridges of what would one day be known as Appalachia, stretched out like the ribs of a sleeping god, veiled in endless forests and crowned in fog. It was a time before ink, before asphalt, before a hum of machines drowned out the voices in the wind. The stars above burned silver and clear, like cold eyes keeping vigil over a world untouched by steel. They blinked down over moss-laden groves and the wet skin of creeks, and the only song in the valley was the breath of the trees, and the earth sang, not with sound, but with a resonance, a hum that lived in stone and root, in bone and marrow, the kind of song that could only be heard with bare feet and closed eyes, the kind of song that pulled your soul into silence and held it there. In this world, wild and wide, people lived not as owners, but as listeners. They moved with the seasons. They spoke in stories. They gave the land names like gifts. High atop a plateau, where Concord University would one day root itself into the world, like a splinter in sleeping flesh, a place never meant for walls, a place that remembered every footstep, every cut into its flesh. It was a sacred place. Hulamek, the belly of the sky. It was not a poetic name. It was a truth whispered down through bloodlines. Here the Lenape believed the Earth Mother had lain to rest after sculpting the world from her own body. Here her spirit had sunk into the stone and birthed the dreaming. No one lived on Hulamek. Not permanently. It was not a place for firewood and cooking. It was a place for offerings. But every year they returned. In the autumn, when the trees blazed gold and red like open wounds, when the air was crisp with the bite of memory, the people came, not as masters, but as guests. They came with bundles of dried meat, pressed tobacco, carved tokens, and stories stitched into the seams of their skins. They moved silently across the ridges, footsteps soft, hearts open, but with dread if the offerings were not enough to satisfy the Earth Mother. They built nothing that would last, just enough. Lodges bent from saplings and hide, fire pits shallow and clean. Offerings were left at the stone circle that crowned the ridge. Antlers, feathers, bones kissed by flame. They gathered, they remembered, they told the stories. Among them lived Wenonah. She was not old in years, but she bore the weight of many lives. Her hair was thick and black, and always smelled of smoke. Her eyes, dark as storm water, seemed to follow things just beyond the edges of fires. Her hands were stained with ash and root. The people called her Aquae, the keeper of memory. She was the healer, the dreamer. Children followed her, not out of fear, but because she knew the names of things even their parents didn't. She spoke to bones, she sang over cuts. She watched the wind and knew what it carried. Her lodge stood just beneath the crown of Hulamek, marked in spirals and old blood. No one dared build too close. Her silence was sacred. She lived with Dakota, her husband, whose laughter could split stone. He was broad and gentle, fierce in battle but tender in peace. Each morning he left her tokens, wild mint, polished stones, feathers found floating where no bird had flown. They had 2 children, Tamakwa, bold and restless, who learned to track before he could count, and Ayoka who was born during a red moon that didn't wane for 3 nights, Ayoka who whispered to insects and sang songs no one taught her. Her eyes were blue-gray, like ice hiding secrets. She did not cry as an infant, she only watched, and the earth seemed to watch her back. Wenonah loved them fiercely. She loved in stillness, in gestures, in words rarely spoken but deeply meant. But inside her, something old had begun to stir. For these 3 seasons now, the dreams had changed. At first they were symbols, spirals, forked tongues, roots curling around the bones of stars. Then they became places. Caves with no mouths, doors without hinges, and then the voice. It did not speak in words. It pulsed. Wenonah told no one, but she began to mark time differently. When a bird's song ended without reason, when a shadow didn't match the shape that cast it, when fire burned blue for a heartbeat. She kept a stick buried in her mat. Each notch was a moment, a shift, a breath held too long. The land still sang, but it was off-key. The harmonies no longer soothed. The wind snapped like whip cracks. The birds flew too high, as if afraid of what waited beneath. The soil grew dense, not dry, dense, like something was swelling beneath it. A deer was brought down near the sacred spring. When Wenonah opened its belly to read the signs, the entrails turned black in her hands. The liver crumbled. The heart was split with hairline fractures, like old wood. Still, she said nothing. But Ayoka began to draw circles, perfect circles, with slashes through them. She said the trees whispered them into her ears while she slept. Tamakwa began to sleep with stones in his fists. Dakota sharpened blades without realizing he was doing it, and Wenonah listened to the silence between heartbeats. One morning the earth cracked outside her lodge. Not wide, not loud, just a single jagged line stretching toward the stone circle. She stood there for hours, bare feet on either side, waiting. That night she awoke to the sound of breathing. Not hers, not Dakota's. Beneath, slow, heavy, wet. She did not sleep again. The next day, when she stepped outside, the bone chimes hanging from her roof were still. No wind, no sound. The earth had stopped singing. It was only listening.